what I might have you start with, since it's the newest thing that you've got, and I'll have you go first, is Alice in Borderlands, because I'm really curious about it. I know that
Sure.
neither one of us was particularly excited about it.
This
I
is true.
think we like the idea of it, but when you watch, especially with where season two ends, it just doesn't seem like there's much point in a season three. And so yeah, I'm super curious about what your take is on it and um and all that because I think we both agreed that it was probably unnecessary.
100% it was unnecessary. So first saw it, I think in 2022, early 2023. And then I know you saw it maybe like a year after it came out. And you watched season one because I remember we were talking about season one, which was fantastic. And then you did see season two. I'm trying to remember if you
Yeah, I've
watch it.
I've
You
seen
did
both of
see
the
season
yeah.
two. Season two was good, not as good as season one, right? Because that's when they're going through the face cards. And
Yeah,
then they leave you at the end of season two with a picture of the Joker card. And
right.
then at that point, first of all, I'm just going to go back to season two and how they ended that. That sucked. With them waking up in the hospital as if there was an earthquake, that was how I just thought it was going to be more of a sim, like they were, I don't know, sent back to that world and then wake up. But instead, they wake up in the hospital, and those that made it in the Borderland world were individuals that survived the earthquake. I
Hmm.
just thought it was just so ridiculous.
Yeah, so it was a real event that basically put them into what amounted to be comas, but they all shared this post, I guess, or during coma life.
Right.
Yeah.
Which ended up only being maybe a few days, from my understanding,
Hmm.
that they were in that state. So I don't know. I at that point I was like, this is stupid. I don't know why they're creating a third season, but they do, right? And then you've got so the two main characters, Arasu and Usagi, come back for season three, and they're married. And it's interesting because at the end of season two, it's like they wake up not knowing what happened and not knowing one another in the hospital. I don't know if you remember at the end. So it's not like he has a recollection of who
Oh
she
yeah,
was and that they
yeah.
were a thing, right? But yet in season three, in real life Tokyo outside of Borderland, they're married, but they don't understand like how they became connected in the first place unless there was some sort of unwritten way that they got together, but not knowing that they met in Borderland. So that's the interesting thing. So they're living their life. They're a married couple at this point, and you meet this new character who is essentially this professor, and I don't know like exactly if he's still teaching. I think he was a previous professor who taught something related to like the philosophy of life, and he's always just questioning like what's in the afterlife. And you come to find that this guy has had like his own trauma, but was so interested in the afterlife that he ends up doing an experiment on a student who he becomes very close with a couple years prior. And initially, he is a fully healthy walking man, and he unfortunately ends up killing the student in this experiment. And an attempt for him to end his life, I guess he tries to kill himself in a car accident. You don't get the full details, but he's now in a wheelchair, this guy. Anyway, he is interviewing people, I believe, after the fact of this earthquake, and he ends up connecting with Usagi. And this character is just curious of the borderland because at that point he's like, all right, this seems like almost like that in between middle ground between life and death, and I want to
Hmm.
see what it's like. So he ends up like manipulating Usagi after people from Borderland, I guess, reach him, the guy, the professor in the wheelchair. And he ends up getting Usagi to go, but she doesn't really know it's Borderland. She doesn't ever remember being there, which is bizarre.
Hmm.
So she ends up going there, and then Arasu's like, "Where's Usagi?" He doesn't know where she is. She's gone. She's missing. And then he, at this point, doesn't really remember Borderland himself. And there's a woman from the first season, I forgot her name, but she's like not a major. Oh, it's I think it's Anne, who gives him some sort of injection, which brings him back to Borderland. Like he ends up being almost like in a hypnotic state, but like back into like his eyes are closed. He's almost like in a maybe a comatose type of state with this injection, and then he gets resurfaced back into Borderland to a brand new game. So he doesn't know where Usagi is this first game. They're in like this traditional like Japanese, it looks like almost like an outdoor temple-esque type of environment. And it's interesting. It starts with maybe like 40 or 50 people. And they have to pull a card one by one. And it's a trivia thing. And if they get the answer wrong, then there are lasers or like some sort of arrows with fire that shoot down on everybody. And they keep on getting every answer wrong. So each round, everyone's dying. And then Arisu figures out, as we know, like Arisu has these like very unique sense of abilities and just he's really good at figuring out the games. So ultimately, this was all rigged so that they could summon him back into the games because I guess those that are in charge of Borderland like having people like Arisu in the games. It's entertainment for them. They prefer to have someone like him versus someone who's like a dimwit who can't figure anything out and then just dies immediately. So at this point, Arisu like doesn't know where he is. He's just looking for his wife. So she's playing her own games, but she's back in the games, but with the guy in the wheelchair, not knowing that he's the one that brought her there or what the situation is. So there are a series of different games that happen, and of course you see the games that she's playing and the games that he's playing, and they're completely separated for most of the season, at least half, maybe most of this third season looking for one another. Well, she's or less looking for her dad. And if you remember from like season one, season two, I think her dad took his life. I'm trying to recall.
Hmm.
But she has this like trauma on wanting to be reunited with her father and the guy in the wheelchair and I guess was given some sort of notice that she is had this trauma. So she's seeing visions of her father while she's there and she's like, I need to see him, I need to see him. So that's kind of her influence in continuing the games, whereas Arisu's like, I gotta find Usagi, we need to get out of here, but not knowing that they were there before until like a few games in. Wait, we played games, like not similar games, but we've been in this alternate universe before. And then realizing, oh shit, like they sent us back. So you meet some new characters, which is really cool. I mean, some are like two are siblings. They have this girl, she looks like an anime character. She's got blue hair and just the way she's dressed, you would see her like in like almost like an anime. Really cool. And yeah, I mean, some of the games are super intense and pretty much like heart-wrenching as like the first and second season. But yeah, I didn't think there was a reason for this third season. Like this guy in the wheelchair, he definitely is there just for his own selfish reasons for him as a professor to try to figure out like what is the meaning of the afterlife and he wants to experience it himself. So that's interesting. And then yeah, I mean, Usagi and Arisu like pretty much everyone dies outside of them for the most part, like shocker. And then they come back to this world and oh, you find out, should I spoil it or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
One of the last games, they're like, okay, they're maybe like 12 people or 11 people, but they're like, there are only 10 people here. And then you come to find out that Usagi's pregnant, so her unborn child counts as like an 11th person.
They Squid Gamed it.
Not only that, Kevin, which is like whatever. So of course they're gonna there's this game where they have to go in different rooms and each person has a certain number of lives. So of course the unborn child has a certain number of lives. So she has a wristband for herself and she has to carry another wristband for this unborn child. So th at like the end, they have to use like the unborn child's like almost like everyone's got like 9 lives or whatever it is, maybe 10, something like that, 10 to 15 lives. But they use like a good amount of this unborn child's lives to save as many people as possible in one of the last games. So it's interesting. And then of course Arisu like sacrifices himself at the end by being stuck in these set of rooms, but you've come to find that like the person that's stuck in these rooms is actually the winner. It's weird, but they end up like reconnecting at the end, and a lot of these people die. Some of these games are outrageous. And then the final couple of scenes is that there's another earthquake. You get to see some of the people from season 1 and season 2, like Cheshire, who's like the Cheshire cat, the gray-haired
Hmm.
guy, and then the girl who's trans, who has like incredible martial arts skills. If you remember her, I forgot
Yeah,
her
yeah.
character's name. Kuina, yeah, she's there, and then Anne's back, but they're talking to Arisu, and Arisu, I guess, is a therapist or social worker, and he's talking to them and asking them questions, but they're in his office and they're speaking to one another as if they never have met before, which is bizarre. So in that world, or once they leave that world, everything's wiped of what happened in Borderland, which is crazy. Even Arisu and Usagi, when they have their child or they're preparing for their child to be born, which you don't see the child being born, but they go back from Borderland and it's like life continues as on, and whatever happened there is in the past. It's completely wiped from their memory. So that's interesting. But yeah, the final end of it, there's an earthquake. And then they show this is where they copy like the Squid Games thing, and I don't know who made it first. They show looks like LA. There's the earthquake happening in Japan. They show LA. They have two guys sitting at a coffee shop, and then the waitress you just see from the neck down, and she's wearing a tag that says Alice, and that's it.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, they're bringing this to America now. They're doing something similar to what they did with Squid Games. They didn't have like a celebrity like a Kate Blanchett at the end, but overall, like the games were cool. I think it was just another way to show, like, let's do another season of Death Games. That's literally what I felt like, which
Yeah.
was fine, but I don't know. I think the way they ended it, season 2, was just stupid for me. There was no reason to continue this. They really brought this guy in the wheelchair as like a huge, like source of bringing up a new story because his deep desire of like learning about the afterlife and using Arisu and Usagi to get him what he needs to do that. But all these games, like they call it the Joker games, but it's not like a certain number of cards, it's just the Joker. But they don't have a certain like the Joker face card is like pretty much in the season, but they don't say, oh, it's like, the Queen of Hearts or whatever. Like they don't reveal a new card or say what each game is going to be. They just reveal the rules in the game, and that's it. So I don't know. I just didn't think there was really a reason for this season. And I mean, obviously they're setting up to potentially open this up to
Whole new set of stories.
whole new set of stories, sort of like with Squid Games, which I was like, I wonder if they knew that Squid Games was going to be doing this. And they're like, let's do it too. Or I don't know. Or if this just, what is the likelihood that they both go to California and show something in California, like they're going to continue the games in America? It's just too similar at the end.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you're going to continue it in the U.S., you're either going to go to L.A. or New York, right? Like those are the two places I think that you would pick to show,
Totally.
carrying on.
But
Um,
LA more so
but
because of the earthquakes, remember? Because
yeah,
the
it's true.
earthquakes
It's
have
true.
such a, well, you find out in season 2 that's why Japan had this happen. That's sort of what I guess, was a trigger for these people entering Borderland. But yeah, it was bizarre. But you don't see the woman's face, you just see her walk with like plates and you just see her name tag and it says Alice. And that's it. That's the end. So, I don't know. I wasn't a fan of it. Like the games were cool to watch and obviously like and during the games like Usagi and Arisu are not going to die, but like pretty much everyone around them dies, right? As expected.
Yeah.
But the games themselves are all like pretty crazy. There's one game where they're on a subway in Tokyo and there's 8 subway cars and they're given a gas mask and there's I think a no, it's a parakeet. In the middle of the car, there's a parakeet in a cage. And when they start each round, they have to put the gas mask on or they leave it off and they have to guess if it's a poisonous car or if it's a regular car with just no actual gas coming in. And they have to decide whether to put the gas mask or not. But you don't know if it's poisonous gas or not until the parakeet either drops dead or is like still standing doing its thing. So you see a lot of people like within the first couple of cars, just use the gas mask, but oh, you can only use your gas. There's only enough like air in the gas mask for 4 out of the 8 cars,
Mm.
which is crazy. So like some people use like in the first 4 cars all gas masks, and I'm like, well, then you're stupid because then you're gonna fuck yourself for the other 4. But there is a guy in there who like knows a lot about trains, so he figures out. Of course, there's someone that knows about trains, like where they would have extra room to drop the gas.
Mm.
So that's fascinating. And for the people that mess up, like their whole body is just like blood's coming from their nose everywhere and they die. So yeah, that was a pretty crazy game. There were some other crazy games too, but yeah, that was interesting. And both of them were playing that game, but on different trains. They were having that same game on different trains. So,
Mm.
and that's the first time like Usagi and Arisu see one another. They're both on a train and they pass one one another at one point, still alive in, I guess, one of the cars where they didn't have to wear a gas mask. And they're like, "Oh my God, I see you across. You're playing the same game, but on a different train." So
Now, in season two, I know we see everybody in the hospital afterwards, but if you die in the game,
you're dead.
you're dead, dead.
You're dead, dead. Yeah, you died
Okay,
in
okay.
the earthquake. Remember his 2 friends who in like I think it was like the second or third game, it was like it was him and his friends that like came with him into Borderland and then this girl. And only one of them could live. And they had this like mask on their head. I forgot what it was called. It was like mouse or like only there was like different animals and I guess if you looked into someone's eyes, then you became the mouse, or I forgot what it was called, but his 2 friends got their like brains
I do
messed
remember
up
that
at
one.
the
Yeah.
end, which was heartbreaking. And then you come to find at the end of season 2, like his friends didn't make it in the earthquake. And that's the same thing for everyone that didn't make it in Borderland.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I couldn't remember if it was, afterwards if you
No,
survived
you're
anyways
you're
and you
you're
reset.
dead, dead. Yeah,
All right.
wild though. The whole thing's just wild. But yeah, I feel like they could have done something better with the ending in the second one that would have made it just more than just, oh, you didn't survive an earthquake. Like I just thought that was such a lame ending.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some potential there for it to be kind of cool.
Right.
But it had to be done right. And yeah, I didn't think that it was. And then when they said they were going to do a third season, I was like, well, what?
Why?
Yeah, how are you putting them back in there and why?
Yeah, not
It
good.
sounds like it was just to make some money.
Yeah, I think so. Like, why else? I mean, they were good games. Don't get me wrong. I literally was like, all right, screw this. Get to the game. Let's see. And that's kind of what it was.
Hmm.
The games themselves are cool. The new characters are cool too. There were a lot of like interesting characters. And as you know, like with a lot of these games, like you really need teamwork. It wouldn't just work with one person. So that's fascinating. But yeah, overall, just disappointment. But I was laughing with the baby situation and then bringing it to America. I'm like, they're copying Squid Games here. What are they doing?
Yeah.
Unless they had this prepared, but it's just a little too close.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, well, Squid Game only came out like 2 months ago, and this was done filming
Yep.
a while ago. So either they knew about the story or it really is a coincidence, which would be weird.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's just it ended way too close.
Yeah,
So, but overall, I don't think it was definitely, in my opinion, the worst season out of the three.
yeah,
Unlike Squid Games, I thought season three was better than season two, and it was really solid how they ended it.
yeah. I think for sure. I think Squid Game ended pretty strong.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm really curious here. Let me look real quick. What's the show called? Alice
It's
in
in Borderland.
Borderland. I'm just curious what the IMDb like episode ratings are because the series itself is this like a 7.3,
Which is
7.4 or
solid.
something like that. I mean, everything's actually in, oh, that's season one. Okay. I was like, it's all rated pretty high. Let's see, 7.3, 7.7, 7.9. Um, yeah, I mean, the worst rated episode is episode five. There's only 6 episodes, I guess.
Yeah, it's a shortened season.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the fifth episode is only a seven, but everything else is higher. It definitely looks like it starts and finishes a little slow and is a little better in the middle.
sure. Well,
With
the games are cool, Kevin. Like the
yeah,
games are good. Like you're sitting at the edge of this. I don't know. I feel like that with all the games. Like, I mean, like hours soon you saw you were gonna make it to the end, but it's more just like, how are they gonna get through this? That's more of the appeal.
mhm,
Are the actual games themselves. They're fascinating. Whoever comes up with them, same thing with, well, Squid Games, they're based on childhood games, but
yeah,
Alice in Borderland, like these are just very creatively crafted and just how they do it and film this and just all of the special effects involved. Yeah, it's intense. So yeah, I can see why they're rated that high because of the games themselves, but the storyline sucks, in my opinion. Just sucks.
yeah. Just the whole point of it.
They're done. They're out of the game. And then the fact that they didn't even remember until they were back into the game. I mean, I haven't seen Severance, but it sounds a lot like Severance, where like they have no recollection of, I guess, what is it, the work life between the work and the,
Yeah, Severance. There's a more defined reason to it,
sure.
and the people in Severance have agreed to this, right? Like
Right.
that's sort
Whereas
of the
they didn't
point.
agree.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's a little different here, but I don't know. It's whatever. It is what it is. Like you
yeah,
said, another way to make money. That's it.
yeah. All right, cool. Well, I'm gonna stick with Netflix really quick, as will not be as long a review because I didn't finish the show.
Uh,
But I've never watched one of the Monster series. So I know you watched
the
the
Eric and
Menendez brothers,
Yep,
right?
the Menendez brothers, Lyle and Eric.
And I know there was another one before that.
Dahmer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, yeah. I watched some of that one. That one didn't bother me too much, but I didn't finish it. And I never watched the Lyle and Eric Menendez one because I didn't really care.
It's
Um,
not as probably as like, I don't want to say interesting, but it's just like, yeah, two dudes that killed their parents that were abusive to them.
yeah,
I get it. Yeah.
yeah. And so they released Monster, the Ed Gein story. And what makes Ed Gein a fascinating character is this is the character that um, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is loosely based on, that Hannibal Lecter is based on, that the film Psycho is based on. So this is a true story about a guy um, that was pretty friggin' crazy, right? Like it's a really a scary story that, if done right, could be really good. And I think I only made it through 3 episodes before I gave up because it's so sensational. Like the show is just so over the top, and they took so many liberties and they did so many things and um,
Hmm.
followed up with information that just didn't feel particularly accurate. Um, and it just, yeah, it's bizarre. I mean, they cast Charlie Hunnam, who is a very handsome fella. He's the main character from Sons of Anarchy. If you've ever watched
Right.
Sons of Anarchy, good looking guy. They they throw some makeup on him and they beat him up a little bit. And I guess so. What's interesting too is that Ed Gein, when he was arrested, only did a couple of interviews. And those interviews were basically lost to the world as far as the audio recordings. So almost nobody actually knows what he sounds like. Like his voice is sort of just not a thing. And I guess there was a single recording that was out there that nobody could get a hold of. And so they had to go from like news articles and stuff about how he talked. And so Charlie Hunnam worked really hard on this voice. And then they ultimately, I guess Charlie Hunnam was very persuasive and got a hold of somebody that had that last interview and was able to hear his voice and did his best to model his voice after the real Ed Gein. But it's so like if it's
Creepy.
accurate, it's not even that it's creepy, it's annoying. Like it's really
Mm,
bizarre. And it's just it's a weird show because they're sort of trying to explain why he's crazy. And it's more that he's just crazy. Like, the performances, at least from what I saw, were pretty good. The woman that plays his mom was Roseanne's sister in Roseanne, whose name completely escapes me right now. She was also the mom on The Big Bang Theory. Um, but anyway, she's a solid actress, so she's good, and she does a good job as the mom. But Ed Gein, much like Anthony Perkins' character in Psycho, had a very overbearing, over-religious mom. Told him, basically women are bad, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and then she dies, so his compass is gone, and because and this is where even here it starts to get very speculative in what's true and what's not. He discovers a woman in Nazi Germany who um, tortured and killed people, but used their skin to make things. So she made lampshades out of people, things like that, like just horrible things. And so he decides that he's going to try and, because he's schizophrenic, like he still hears his mom's voice. Um,
yeah,
he's it's not quite like Frankenstein's monster kind of thing, but he's trying to keep her body around, so he's doing that. But he also builds a chair out of like skin, like he's crazy, and that's what kind of also was the inspiration for Texas Chainsaw, is that in that Leatherface is cutting people's faces off and wearing them because he's crazy.
sure.
Um, and so it goes through all of this, but there's these scenes that are so over the top where they're not even about Ed Gein anymore. They take you to they're just completely set in Nazi Germany with a completely different like it's about like the crazy Nazi lady, and it doesn't have anything to do with the show really at all. And I think they try and justify it by saying it's in his imagination from the things that he's read, but it's just like pointless and over the top and just bad. Like there's a whole scene where um, he's out in a field doing something, and he sees like a Jewish prisoner from from one of the internment camps come running over over the hill. And granted,
Hmm.
this is in 1965, 70, something like that, right around then. And then all of a sudden, a whole wave of them come running over, and he starts running from them and gets himself trapped in a house, and he starts freaking out because they're beating down the door. Um, but it's just him having an episode, and like the idea is that it's supposed to show like his schizophrenia and how this stuff is eating at him. But there's no real evidence that he was infatuated with Nazis at all. There's the person that gave this information to him was a girl that they sort of set him up as dating in the show.
Right.
And at least in real life, she says that they never dated, this woman.
That's
Um,
bizarre.
yeah, it's just they just took so many liberties with it. And then another chunk of time they spend with um, Alfred Hitchcock and Anthony Perkins talking about, how Anthony Perkins has to get in the mind of this serial killer and how they sort of deal with Anthony Perkins, who at the time was dealing with his own homosexuality in a time that he really couldn't be, right? When Psycho was filmed.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a really, really weird show. And I think that overall, I don't think it did very well. And I don't, having not finished it, I can't really say how good or bad it was, but looking at some of these ratings for season three, like the final episode is like a 6.4,
Yeah,
and the best episode looks like a 7.3. And it's just too weird. It's too weird for what it is. And it's uncomfortably weird. And so you have this opportunity to take something and make it genuinely scary because this guy was damaged, and
right.
it's like Ryan Murphy took all this effort into making him a sympathetic character. And one of the things, so I think if I'm not mistaken, he really was only ever convicted of killing two people. And most of the weird stuff that he did with people's skin and all the weird shit that he did in real life was actually from grave robbing, which is still bad, right? And still crazy, but not as bad as being like a super murderer.
Like Jeffrey
Um,
Dahmer.
right, right. Now, I could be wrong about that. Like he could have killed more people, um, but like they really tried to make him sympathetic when I think he was like, and not that being schizophrenic doesn't deserve some sympathy, like it's completely out of your control, schizophrenia.
Right.
But I think, yeah, I think it was just too much of, these are the things that made him crazy, so it's not his fault. And yeah,
Yeah.
it really was out of his control. And um, it's interesting because you have a story like Texas Chainsaw that's inspired by this. So you would kind of expect this show to be more, I don't know, at least like horror adjacent and maybe a little more gruesome and something like that. So because especially because they released it in October, right? Like they were kind of hyping it up to be released for
Sure.
Halloween, and it's just to me, it's not scary. Like this, the,
Right.
the story's not scary, and it's just sort of there. And I wish this story had been done by somebody else. Um, because it is an interesting story. It's definitely um, curious and worth, um, you know, doing the research on because it is fascinating. Like this guy was crazy, and it had inspired several things. And things that are famous, things that are very famous. Like I said, Psycho, one of the most popular, like old school horror
Horror
movies of all
movies.
time. Uh, um, Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, one of the greatest horror movies of all time. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, a classic horror film. So like these are all inspired by him, and then you watch this, and he's just like a weirdo, and you're like, oh, okay. Like it's just
Yeah.
weird, and not that I want to like watch it and be like, yes, he really was crazy. Look at him killing all those people, but like I just wanted something more interesting, and it wasn't
Yeah.
particularly interesting.
Now,
So.
was this guy married, have kids, or no?
No, no. So in the beginning, there's a girl that he likes and he's talking to. Um, and then after his mother dies, he convinces her to come over to his house. And that's when she sees a chair that is very obviously made out of human skin. And she's like, I gotta go. She gets super uncomfortable and leaves. But
Yeah.
from what I could see, he ultimately like talks to her again and they're okay. And they continue to speak to each other. And so it's really bizarre, and I don't understand, how this stuff works because, like I said, in real life, um, she steered pretty clear of him, and so they're taking some real liberties with this story,
Right.
um, and it just doesn't sound like they needed to. I mean, it is a creepy enough story. Like I don't know why. Like I know that Ryan Murphy isn't making a documentary, right? Like he's not making a 100% true story, but the liberties that he took just feel like big swings that don't make much sense.
Right.
So yeah, I know that, um,
Is it rated lower than the Jeffrey? Because I think Jeffrey Dahmer, the when that came out, a lot of people were talking about it. The Eric and Lyle Melendez one, That's the only one I saw, and there were a couple of nominees that came out of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely rated. You can see kind of the decline in ratings as these go on. So if you
Sure.
look at IMDb, the episodes for the first season, for the Dahmer season, all average, like they average out at about 8,
Yeah,
right? Here we're, with the second one, other than one episode that's actually rated a 9 for the Eric and Lyle Menendez one, everything's around a 7.5. It averages out.
sure.
And then when you get to this Ed Gein one, everything seems to be averaging out around 7.
Okay,
Um,
so it does decline a bit.
yeah,
Gotcha.
it seems like it's really falling off, and
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's just not particularly good. And I know he's got a Lizzie Borden um, monster series coming out, and that's she was a literal axe murderer, Lizzie Borden. And so it's an interesting story, but again, like I feel like if they took less liberties, they would be telling a more compelling story about something that actually happened. And the liberties that they took are just, for me, are too much. And then, it's just bizarre. I do think, like, I could see Charlie Hunnam potentially at least getting a nomination for his work because
Hmm.
he's so not Charlie Hunnam. Like the work that he did, he is acting very well. Um, I just think what they gave him was too bizarre.
Yeah,
Um, so
true.
yeah, basically, I really like kind of don't recommend it at all. I think if you are curious about the story, I know, and I can't remember the names of them, but there's a couple other stories about Ed Gein that are more accurate and supposedly more interesting.
I think the reason I watched the Lyle and Eric Menendez story was because there was a chance of them being able to, at the time, I
Hmm.
believe, right? I'm trying to think, like within the past 2 years, I think they were um,
Yeah,
brought back to trial, right? Like to
yeah, I
potentially
think this year, I think
be,
they just got
was it this year?
denied. Yeah, I think it was this year. I think they just got denied either a new trial
Right.
or something else.
Yeah,
Um,
that sparked my interest to actually watch it because I knew that was like a big thing in the 90s. My parents talked about it in
yeah,
the
it's
past.
huge.
So I was like, all right, this is something that I had heard about before, but wanted to learn more. And also just Javier Bardem. I'm like, I like everything he's been in. So I was like, all right, that's a big name.
I think there's a lot of things that make the Menendez one work a little better too.
Hmm.
Maybe most importantly that it's at least the most recent thing in the zeitgeist, right? Like that feels pretty modern, even though like at this point it's 30 years ago. It still
Sure.
feels relatively new. Dahmer's a little older than that. And then obviously
Right.
the whole um, Ed Gein thing is super old, right?
Right. It's
So
like what, like
yeah,
60, 70 plus years old at
yeah, yeah,
least.
yeah. And I think while the story very clearly inspired some stuff that is um, very important in modern culture, at least interesting in modern culture. Like I said, Psycho, all the things that it did inspire. Um, People don't really remember the story, because it's so old. And I think, I mean, Dahmer, you're pushing out, I think, even what people really remember. But yeah, it's just,
And even
yeah.
you said like the lack of interviews with this guy Ed Gein, whereas there's like plenty of footage during the trials for Dahmer
Oh,
and
yeah.
Lyle and Kyle Menendez, because even it looks like the trials for Dahmer were like early 90s, so there's plenty of footage and stuff of hearing his voice, everything.
Hmm. Yeah.
And it based on what you said Lizzie Borden, that's 1800s. You're gonna good luck trying to get like that
Yeah.
put
Yeah.
together.
You're just
It's gonna
getting
be
like
much harder.
yeah, everything is speculation. So,
Correct.
and old world journalism, right? Like it's just the information you're going to have is going to be super limited,
Sure.
and so it's a weird choice. I know, like Lizzie Borden is an interesting story. Like she was crazy, she did some really crazy stuff. But
Right.
I'm curious to see if, looking at this one, how far it dipped from the previous two, if people are even going to be interested in the next one. You know,
For sure.
so we'll see. But
Yeah.
all right, well, we can move on from that, but maybe we can lighten the mood a little bit, and you can talk
Sure.
about Four Seasons on Netflix.
Yes, the Four Seasons. It came out in May, and I watched a little preview of it, and I was looking for something short, and this is only maybe 6 to 8 episodes, but a half hour per episode, so pretty short and sweet. This was written by Tina Fey, and it has a really great cast. Former SNL cast member Will Forte plays her husband. Tina Fey plays Kate. We've got Steve Carell playing a character by the name of Nick. Coleman Domingo plays Danny. So it takes place first during the spring, and three different couples come together. Tina Fey's character Kate and her husband Jack, and then you've got Steve Carell and his wife, who's played by Carrie Kenny Silver. Her name's Anne, and then Coleman Domingo and his husband, who is played by Marco Calvani. He plays Claude. And these three couples come to a cabin and they celebrate. I believe at that point it's the 25th anniversary for Steve Carell's character and his wife Anne. And you come to find maybe like the second day of this cabin trip that Steve Carell is walking the woods with Will Forte, who's plays Jack, and then Coleman Domingo, who plays Danny. These guys, by the way, like went to college together, and that's how they all became friends. Um, Steve Carell, Tina Fey, Will Forte, and then Coleman Domingo. The four of them all went to college, and they all became friends through that. Coleman Domingo's has his partner. They're gay, and then Steve Carell, I guess, meets his wife after college. But the three guys are in the woods, and he says, "After this weekend, I'm going to break up with my wife, and I'm going to divorce. I'm not happy. I feel like we're two different strangers that just sleep in the same bed. Like we're not anything." They have a daughter, and they're kind of like shocked by this. Like you're celebrating your 25th year anniversary, wedding anniversary, and yet like you're going to break up with your wife after this. It's bizarre. So, of course, there's like a bunch of awkwardness. So, this first episode, it's them just hanging out at like this lake house situation cabin. And you could just tell the marriage is very strained, and Anne wants to connect with her husband. He is totally, at this point, wants nothing to do with her. And yeah, and then the other couples, of course, are trying to, keep this to themselves that, well, more so, Jack tells his wife, Kate, who's played by Tina Fey, look what I just heard. Like, isn't this bizarre? I can't believe he's going to divorce her after this. And like at this time when we're all spending a good amount of time together at this cabin. So you get to learn that these three couples spend at least like one season together a year, or at least not one season together, but one like they'll have one to get together every season throughout the year. So they do the cabin house like every spring, it seems, where they've been going for years for different events and things. And then in the second episode, well, at the end of the first episode, you come to find that it's like the second or third day. And Steve Carell's character Nick goes into town to, I guess, pick up bagels. And they wake up in the morning, and Anne's like, "I'm gonna do a vow renewal, and our daughter's gonna come, and it's gonna be a really nice ceremony, and I can't wait to do this vow renewal with Nick." And at this point, Danny, who's played by Coleman Domingo, he's freaking out. He's like, "I cannot believe we're doing this," like when he's planning to break up with her after this trip. And then, of course, Tina Fey's character and Will Forte's character, they're just besides themselves. They're like, "What do we do? We don't want to like not be supportive of our friend who is the wife," but they dress up and they're like, "This is going to be a disaster." So you see the the proposal, and then it ends up in like a very funny manner. Like I guess this barn in the background ends up like going up in flames, and then next episode it's summertime, and Steve Carell is with a new woman who's in her 30s, girlfriend that he apparently met like started dating a few months later. And then the three couples are at a resort somewhere in the Caribbean. So they're coming together again. And while they're away, you see that like each of these couples has their own issues. And you come to find, all right, like clearly nobody's relationship is perfect here. You see that Coleman Domingo's character had some health issues where he needed to get a stent put into his heart, and he's trying not to make a big deal about it, whereas his partner and husband Claude is like, no, dude, like you should make a big deal about it. Like this is serious surgery. He keeps on wanting to put off a surgery. He finally gets the surgery between the spring episodes and the summer episodes, but even him just like not taking it easy and his husband like being really on top of him, that's frustrating. And then you could tell that Kate and Jack, they don't definitely sync all that much either. Like they have some issues in general when it comes to just opening up about things that bother them about the other partner. So that comes up. And yes, and then you meet this new girlfriend and they're who's in her 30s, and Steve Carell is like loving his life and they're having a bunch of sex, and like you hear them in like the other they're in this island, they're in like this kind of shitty resort where they each get their own tent, and you hear them from one tent like them just having a bunch of sex, and they're like, this is really fast, like why are they doing this and why is she being put on this trip? She's like in her 30s and all of us at this point we're in our like late 40s early 50s, like it's kind of inappropriate and weird. So that happens, and then the ex-wife, I think they're still friends with the ex-wife too, right? Because they're friends with both Steve
Mhm.
Carell and his wife. So they pretty much lied to her and didn't tell her that they were all there, but then she sees stuff on social media, these pictures. So she ends up going to like a really luxurious resort and has her own like single vacation. So of course she ends up being there. And then episode two ends with there being like a huge hurricane and they have to evacuate their shitty hotel and tents because it's just not salvageable at this point. And then they end up going to the luxury hotel and staying with Anne, which is funny because it's like she's not even supposed to be there in the first place, but she did that more so out of like, I want to snoop because my friends are going on vacation and doing trips without me. And then you go to the third season, which each season is like two episodes. So the third season is fall. And it just so happens that Steve Carell and his wife, Carrie Kenny Silver, who plays Anne, their daughter goes to the same university as Tina Fey and Will Forte's daughter. So they go for like homecoming parents weekend. And apparently it's the same school that they all went to college-wise. So they all get together and then they stay at the same hotel. Steve Carell's still with like the young girlfriend at this point. And then Anne comes and it's like awkward because they still are not divorced yet. It's not even, it's maybe like 6 months since this all went down, which is awkward. And then you just see these relationships, have their issues. Coleman Domingo and his the guy who plays his husband Marco Calvani have like a big fight and they try to bring like another gay guy in because sometimes swinging is big in I guess homosexual relationships, and they I guess like to have their fun and bring in like a third, and then it gets like really weird because his husband's like very concerned about Coleman Domingo's health, his character Danny, and then like while they're hooking up with this third guy, I think they're going to reach for a condom and he finds like a pack of cigarettes and he's like, "What the fuck are you doing? Like you almost died." And then they make a big scene, and this third guy who's like way younger and he's like super cute. He's like, bye. I just wanted to hook up with this hot couple that they found on Grindr. And he's like, you guys are fighting like when we're supposed to have sex and like have a threesome, but bye. So he leaves and they have like a huge fight, which is kind of funny. And yeah, it's awkward as hell because the girlfriend's at parents' weekend, which is probably not appropriate. And then the daughter of Steve Carell's character and his wife in the show, Anne's character is putting on a play, and the play is like something that she wrote. So they all go to this play, and the play ends up being about what it feels to feel like basically I'm abandoned and my dad is dating a whore who's younger or something like that. And it's just really funny. So of course the girlfriend like storms out and is hysterical. Steve Carell is completely embarrassed that this play at the university that's being showcased is about his life, which is so super embarrassing that his daughter wrote. So that's it funny. But yeah, and then finally the last season is winter and Steve Carell spends so all of the other couples at this point, his ex-wife or soon to be ex-wife Anne, and then the two other couples are at the lake house, which is I guess where they go for New Year's Eve every year. And Steve Carell's character, he's not there. He's with his 30-year-old girlfriend and all of their friends. And he feels really out of place because he's like 15 to 20 years older and he can't relate to them and they're all vegan and it's like for him very uncomfortable. And do you want me to spoil it or no?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so he like realizes in like that second to last episode how much he misses his friends and even though like his relationship unfortunately didn't work out, he really misses being with his friends during the holidays when he's with his significant other. There's an age gap that he can't really relate to the friends. So he's like, all right, she gets really pissed off at him. He ends up going out for a drive to get, I guess, vegan friendly food at the supermarket, and then he ends up getting into a car crash and dies,
Oh shit.
which is crazy. And then Tina Fey's character gets the call from the girlfriend, and they're all together and they're freaking out. And then the last episode is his funeral. And at the end of the episode, you find out that the girlfriend's pregnant with his kid, which is pretty wild. So, and the whole funeral, like it's the funeral's hysterical because they put his ashes in the urn, but like they got the wrong urn and it's in like a stiletto shaped, like it's a stiletto, the actual urn. Like you would think it's like in a very beautiful vase type of looking thing. It's a fucking like ceramic stiletto. And like it's hysterical. So they're like, oh, we'll change that after. So I don't know how that happened. It's funny. And then they're all making speeches, and it's just awkward because his ex-wife, who's the one who's making the eulogy, has really like she makes like a eulogy, but you could just tell she doesn't really know her ex-husband very well. And his girlfriend, over the 5, 6 to 9 months that they were together, she really got to know him. And it seemed like he was really happy when they were together. And the ex-wife did not want her to speak. And then after the fact, when they're all together at the end of the last episode, they realized like we probably should have let her speak because it seems like she got to really know Nick the most. And then it's revealed that she's pregnant. So that's probably why they're doing this next season. Like, what's going to happen with her being pregnant? Are we going to raise this kid? And you can see the most empathetic is actually the ex-wife when she finds out that she's pregnant. She's actually the person that she reveals the pregnancy to before everyone else finds out.
Do you think then if they do a second season, it would definitely be a continuation and not a different set of stories about different people?
I think it would be a continuation,
Okay.
but yeah, I thought it was fine. I think it there were some very funny scenes where I was just like, I cannot believe this is happening. It definitely made sense that it was Tina Fey, a very Tina Fey type of humor was thrown in. But, it definitely highlights how dysfunctional a lot of relationships are and how on the surface things might look great from photos and such, but there are a lot of, I think, ebbs and flows within a relationship. I mean, even just showing how in certain seasons, literally seasons in the actual series for season one, right? Coleman Domingo and his husband, they start off like okay, right? And then he gets his surgery, and then you could tell they're on like a little bit of a downward, trajectory. And then like by the end of I guess once they reach winter, they're solid. again. They've been able to learn and grow together. And Tina Fey and her husband, like they start off really strong, but then I think they have their own insecurities, and specifically by like after summer going into the fall season, like they have to you find out that they're in couples therapy, and there are a couple months where they haven't been intimate, so they're struggling with their marriage and having their own issues. So, yeah, it's definitely, I think, very telling about sometimes couples will have their issues and certain things they'll expose to their friends and certain things they won't. And it's just one of those realities that everyone's got their issues. It's perfectly, normal, but also just how committed are you to working on these issues in order to grow as a couple? And for Steve Carell's character, he was already done, mentally done, didn't want to work on it. Whereas his wife, I think, was ex-wife wanting to work on it. So, yeah,
Well, it sounds like it's at least decent, right? Like it's
yeah,
good.
I watched the whole thing.
Yeah.
The last two
And
episodes were a real shocker, though. The fact that they even killed someone off, it didn't seem like that type of series where I was like, oh, they're going to kill someone off.
yeah, yeah. I mean, would you still call it a comedy then?
I think so.
Okay, because I
Definitely more of a comedy, but there's some serious moments as well. Yeah,
all right, cool. Then then yeah, sounds like it's worth a watch, and it's getting a second season. So if you enjoy it, get ready
for sure.
for more. Cool. Well, then I'll move on. Real quick, I'll talk about Peacemaker, which just had its final episode on, I don't know, this last week,
Hmm.
over on HBO. And this is a continuation of Peacemaker season one, which is one of the only things in all of the DC movies that James Gunn kept when he took over and started doing Superman.
Hmm.
And so I'm going to go ahead and be spoilery here because I don't know if or when Andrew's going to watch it. I know you haven't watched it and you're probably not in a hurry to watch it.
I'm not going to watch
Um,
it.
and so, um, yeah, just keep in mind it'll be a little spoilery, but
Sure.
the whole season is interesting because I think it's a silly show. It's over the top. And I've talked about how John Cena is really good at playing kind of that doofy character. Like he's really good at playing a character that is a big bag of muscles and not a lot of brains. Um, he's great at it, and I actually think he's a pretty intelligent guy and a funny guy. But playing this character is definitely like sort of his wheelhouse. And they actually did some really interesting stuff this season with this character, and they put him through a lot. Like it's actually a pretty emotional season for the character. Um, so for anybody that didn't or doesn't remember, in season one, we find out how he became a hero. His father was relatively abusive when he was young. He made him fight his brother, and they got in a fight, and somehow he ended up killing his brother when they were young. And so he's always blamed himself for that. And so he grew up without his brother. He does the hero thing, um, makes a lot of mistakes, hurts people, whatever, because he's a crazy person. Like he's not very well regulated, you know. And especially if you watch the second and much better Suicide Squad movie, Peacemakers in that one, and he, he's just a mess. Like he's really not, even though he does things to like save the world, he's not a hero. Like he's not a good guy. And especially this second season, like in the first season, they sort of save the world. Like him and his buddies all save the world. So he becomes more of an actual hero. But in this season, like there's a real evolution. So after everything is finished in the first season, he's still feeling kind of empty, and he finds that there's this door in his dad's house, who is he, I think he killed his father in season one because his father's a bad guy. His father's a racist and just a terrible guy. And so he inherits his father's house. He finds a door in the house that opens up, and it is a portal to like this pocket dimension that has all kinds of doors inside of it. And he goes to one of the doors, and it's got like a code panel on it, and he realizes that it's the same one that's on his door. So he types in the code, opens it up, and it's this beautiful big mansion house. And it turns out his brother is still alive in this dimension, and his father is still alive and doesn't suck. Like they all get along and they're all heroes. And so, he spends a couple of days in this dimension and realizes this is where he'd rather be. Like he doesn't feel like the weight of the world in the way that he does in the other one. Like he doesn't feel the guilt for all the things that he's done. But then the Peacemaker from that world shows up. They get in a fight and he accidentally kills basically the other version of himself. So now he feels like obligated to stay in this world a little more so that, he can live in this life and doesn't have to explain what happened. And so he spends a lot of time there and he is able to live out a great relationship with his brother, with his dad. And then there's this woman over here who is actually James Gunn's wife, um, but her character's name is Amelia Harcourt. And in his real universe, he likes her, but they can't get on the same page, and she's super crazy. In this other dimension, she's like super chill. She likes him. They've dated. It's all good. So he's kind of living the dream in this dimension, and he ultimately decides that he's going to go stay. He's like I'm just going to go there and be happy. And what we come to find out when his friends from when this group of people behind me, when all of his friends from his real dimension go to convince him to come back, we find out that the one that he's been living in the whole time is a dimension where the Nazis won World War II. And what we realize is that it's crazy racist over there. And he just like, he looked past it because he was so happy. He was seeing all the good things around him, that like the rose-colored glasses stuff, that he doesn't realize when his friend comes to save him. Um, I forget her character's name, but she's just walking down the street because she doesn't realize it's a bad place to be, and everybody like sees her and starts freaking out because she's a black woman out in public, and like it's this crazy like thing, and so you know it sounds crazy and it sounds ridiculous and sounds stupid, but then there's a moment where he has to face off against his father and his brother in this dimension and explain to them that he killed their version of himself, right? And the dad is like super calm. So his dad that was like a crazy like Klansman in his own universe is like
Right.
the calm, collected one in this one. He's like, look, just go home. You made a mistake. There's nothing we can do. Super calm. His brother goes ape shit, and wants to kill him for it. Um, but he finds out in this dimension, and one of his friends calls his dad a Nazi, which in his own dimension, his dad basically was. He was a white supremacist, kind of Nazi, kind of crazy guy. And in this one, he's like, don't call me that. He's
Right.
like, I can't help the world that I'm in right now, but I would never be that. And so, like, he's actually a really good guy here. And then he ends up getting killed. And so
Mm.
now you've got Peacemaker. His name's Chris, is the character's name. Now he's like carrying the weight of, in his own dimension, he's responsible for his brother's death. He killed his dad. He comes to this dimension, kills a version of himself. He's responsible for his dad's death. He almost killed his brother. Like, so he's just like everything bad, you know. And he's like, I'm cursed. Everything around me is, you know, bad things happen around me. And so he's trying to get away from his friends, and they, have a really nice heart to heart. And they're like, look, the reason that these things are happening around you is because you're not believing in yourself. You're not listening to yourself. Every bad thing that has happened to you or around you is because you didn't just follow your instincts and believe in yourself. You let other people tell you what to do. They're like, you're a good person.
Mm.
You just need to, believe in yourself and push through. And so it starts to end on a really happy note. And you get to the last like 5 minutes of the episode, and everybody's happy. It's like this whole new world. His friends have started their own like agency to do, superhero-y things and all that. And then at the very end of the episode, he gets kidnapped by a character named Rick Flag Sr., who, of course, in the Suicide Squad movie,
Hmm.
Peacemaker killed his son. So they take him and they throw him into this new pocket dimension that they formed and trap him there. And that is where the season ends. But there's a lot of little things that happen in the season that are setting it up to be a huge part of what's coming down the line for DC after Superman. At
Hmm.
one point, when Rick Flag and his people are trying to find Peacemaker, they have run out of options on how to find him, and he turns to Lex Luthor, who is still played by Nicholas Hoult, right? So it's Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, and interviews with James Gunn have pointed out that as soon as you get in bed with Lex Luthor, you lost because he's smarter than you. So even
Hmm.
though Lex Luthor's behind bars in Belle Reve prison, um, he is now controlling things that Rick Flag is doing for the government. Like he has set him up to be able to do things, but it's because he's got Rick Flag exactly where he wants him to be. So this starts to set up a bunch of things. So number one, Lex is gaining power again. The little pocket planet universe dimension that they threw Peacemaker into, the goal of that is to throw supervillains into. Well, in the comics, that whole world it becomes something like super crazy. Like a bunch of villains are there, a bunch of bad guys are there, and it ultimately they kind of become an evil super group. But it also gives them a connection to a planet in DC Comics called Apocalypse, and that's where
Hmm.
arguably the biggest bad in all of DC Comics, Darkseid, lives. So they're potentially setting that up for the future. And then the organization that Peacemaker's friends created is called Checkmate. And in one of the larger comic book stories of the last like 20 years, Checkmate ultimately led to something called the OMAC Project, which was this sort of huge project to stop all superpowered people, and it goes horribly awry. So there's a couple of things that are potentially set up by the end of this series, but they're nice and vaguely set up, right? Like it's not like this is the next thing you're gonna see.
Right.
But one thing that's super interesting is that they have said that there is not going to be a Peacemaker season three. So they ended on this cliffhanger with him in this other place. They don't even show yet that his friends don't know where he is, or anything like that. But they have said at least at this point there are no plans for a Peacemaker season three. So it's really interesting because they are setting up a bunch of possible things for the future of DC, the DC cinematic
Universe,
universe,
yeah.
right? Um, but they've taken this character and just kind of left him out there hanging. And my assumption, my belief is that rather than technically making a Peacemaker season three, they'll do a show called Checkmate, which will be about his friends and their new organization. And it won't necessarily involve him, although they'll be looking for him and he may
Yeah.
show up. But it won't be a Peacemaker series anymore.
Wasn't he
Uh,
bad? Like, because I only know Peacemaker from the most recent Suicide Squad.
mhm. Yeah, and he's not bad, but he's not good. He's an anti-hero, right? Like he does really bad shit to get good things done, right? Like he in his mind, and I think what makes him an interesting character, um, in his mind, the ends justify the means. So he is trying to do something good, but if you're in the way, he's just going to kill you. Like that's just
Because I
how it
recall,
goes.
doesn't he kill Rick Flag in
Yes,
Suicide
that
Squad?
that
Yeah, I
that
remember
that's
that scene. Yeah.
yeah, and that's the whole. reason that he at the end of this ends up in a pocket dimension because the Rick Flag that he kills in that is Rick Flag Jr. and Rick Flag Sr.
Uh,
is the one that throws him into this pocket dimension at the end.
mm,
And so, um, yeah, it's really well done, and I think what really makes it a lot of fun is especially when you watch Suicide Squad and then you watch season one of Peacemaker. It's a little silly, like, and not necessarily in a bad way, but it is very like jokey and comic heavy, and they really lean into kind of how dumb this character is, right? Like he's a doofus.
mhm,
And again, he is an anti-hero who believes that the end justify the means. This second season is actually an incredible amount of character growth and really is a good season of television when you take it for what it is in the universe that it's in and then the things that it sets up. So for anybody that watched Suicide Squad and like the character at all, even just a little bit, the series is much better with the character. And I think the amount of character growth that they take, the journey that they take him on between through seasons one and two is pretty impressive. And
mhm,
I think John Cena really does a great job with this character. And everybody around him is really good. This guy, his character's name is Vigilante. He's hilarious. And it's just really good. It's a really fun show, and it kind of shows you what the potential is for DC going forward um, as a
mhm.
um, as a theatrical universe. So, for like I said, for anybody that even remotely liked the character, I definitely recommend it. If you watch season one of Peacemaker and for some reason haven't watched season two, I definitely recommend it. I think it for me, I think that it's better than the first season. I don't know where it rates out on IMDb as far as the seasons go. I can look real quick and see if I'm crazy here. Let's see. Um, season like the show overall is an 8.3. Let's see, season one looks like everything averages around an 8 or higher, with the finale being a 9.
Mhm.
Right? So it actually looks like it may average out around an 8.5. Season two, a little lower, probably closer to everything averaging out an 8, although
Right.
the episodes 6 and 7, they're out of 8. So 6 and 7 out of 8 are the two highest rated episodes of the entire series of either season. So it definitely has its ups and downs, but I really I really enjoyed it, and I think it sets up a lot of things potentially for what's coming. James Gunn has very specifically said that this ties into everything that he's got planned coming down the line. So it is a good show to watch for that respect too. Even though I think it is it's one of those things that I think is going to tie into more things, but it doesn't
Mhm.
necessarily tie into things that have already happened. So I think this is going to be sort of retroactive satisfaction, right? Like in 3 years, when you're watching the movies that come out, you're going to see the things that were basically created by the show or tie into the show, and then be able to appreciate it.
Yeah,
Um, but I
definitely.
think it's really good.
For sure.
So. Yeah, that one's on HBO, and like I said, I definitely, if you're even if you don't even know anything about Peacemaker, if you are interested in DC and what they're doing, I think it's a good show to watch. It's a lot of fun.
Totally.
So that is all I've got. You've got one more thing. You've got a
I do. I went back
musical.
to Broadway, Kevin.
Yes,
I went for opening night to see, let me go back, the Queen of Versailles, our girl, Kristen Chenoweth.
Kristen Chenoweth. I love her.
So I saw Idina Menzel earlier in the year in the show Redwood, which unfortunately didn't last that long on Broadway. But I did like that show. And then this brand new show, Stephen Schwartz, who wrote the music and created Wicked,
Okay.
this was his new baby, and it sucked. I was really disappointed. This is the worst thing have seen so far in 2025 when it comes to Broadway. So I'll take you back to the early 2000s. This is based on a true story. Have you heard of this? Do you know anything
Mm-mm.
about this? All right, I will walk you through. So actually, Andrew might appreciate this. So it's a story about this woman named Jackie Siegel, who is a socialite and multimillionaire who married David Siegel, excuse me, who was the founder, owner, CEO of Westgate Resorts. And I guess they were really big in like 80s, 90s, maybe early 2000s. And they get married, figure around like early 2000s, and they go to France for the honeymoon. And both of them came from nothing, essentially. She grew up in like the Binghamton, New York area, and her parents, had, you know, modest livings, doing not the most like prosperous type. They didn't have the most prosperous type of career or the largest home, but Kristen Chenoweth's character, Jackie, always wanted more for herself and to live a life where she was living on top and able to make it big. So even though professionally and she did well in school and tried to get a job like at IBM, she wasn't able to rise the ranks like she wanted to. So she tried to marry rich. She ended up marrying after having a child with this Wall Street guy that didn't work out. She met David Siegel, probably I think it was like late 90s, who's at least like 25, 30 plus years older than her. After their honeymoon, she says, I want to build a house, the largest house in America that's modeled after the House of Versailles. So they choose Florida and they start constructing this huge home, the largest private residence to be in the US. And while this is happening over the years to build this, they plan what they want in this place. He wants a Benihana. She wants to have like a secret closet room to connect with their daughter, just like different things that each family member wants in this home. And of course, the 2008 recession hits, and that takes them back a lot. And it's a harsh reality for her. And then she just starts becoming this, I guess, just putting herself out there on television, doing interviews, crazy commercials, anything that she can to scrape up money, given that this company of her husband's has gone bankrupt and this dream of hers to build this home is no longer a thing. It's a ridiculous story. She's incredibly money hungry. He's money hungry. It's unnecessary for them to have or want such a home like this, especially when, I mean, realistically, at this time, I mean, people are really suffering during 2008 and are losing a lot of money. And they have to dig themselves out. And they finally do after, I think, like months and months, maybe even a year of this. And they're still trying to put this home together. Meanwhile, her daughter's struggling from mental health issues, addiction. Her daughter ends up committing suicide. And you see Jackie go back home to her parents when they're really struggling during this time financially. And she's like, you know what? Yeah, we should totally just live a modest life like I grew up. And then as soon as everything gets patched up with her husband's company, we're going to continue building now. And it's almost like everything that she had said in that moment when she was at her lowest is completely gone out the window. And it's just another one of those stories where it's like, be happy with the small things, but instead, this is a musical that's somehow written about a woman that becomes incredibly just greedy and wants this big home. And at the end of the day, in the musical, the husband's old and he kind of doesn't want anything to do with her. She's all alone. The daughter that she had, gone. They have, I guess, six other kids that they don't really talk about in the musical, but one of her nieces comes to stay with her, and as soon as this house is built, she's gone too. And she's all by herself. It's just her and this big house. And how really wealth doesn't, cure loneliness. and something like self-love is something that has to be worked on and stuff. And you can tell this woman struggles so much to feel important and to prove to the world that she's important. And in many cases, she was a laughing stock for many years. They made fun of her on these shows, and I guess she had a documentary made about her, and I think this was what inspired Steven Schwartz to create this musical. But it was just ridiculous, Kevin. I couldn't believe it. The opening scene in mu Number was awesome because they take you back to the 1600s in the actual Versailles with, forgive me, I don't know which Louis it was, but like really taking it historically back into the past. And yeah, I mean, I'm just reading through. It's Louis the 14th, I think. One of the Louis. So yeah, it's just it wasn't good, Kevin. Like the music numbers, there were a few like music numbers where you get to hear her whole range, which is awesome. But a lot of after this like opening scene where you see all these beautiful paintings and you're in the Palace of Versailles, it's like that part of the stage moves out and then it's a construction site for a majority of the play or of the show. They have this screen that comes out and you see like Fox News and all of these reports and just everything about Jackie Siegel and how she's trying to make it big with this big home that she's trying to build. But I just thought it's good to pull from real life stories, but this was not the story I think that they needed to make into a musical. It's just I think not something that people wanted to resonate with. This isn't like a good person, like a someone who did something that really contributed to society. It's just a greedy individual and who made some serious mistakes that really, I mean, in many cases, I think she's very much so responsible for her daughter feeling the way she did and committing suicide. Not to say like that's the main cause, but yeah, it's not a show that I don't think it's going to last long, Kevin. I don't think it's something that people are going to resonate with and say, "Wow, I feel inspired," or "This was a great show. What an impact." It was not good.
And the music wasn't even good enough to
No.
carry it.
No. I didn't like feel like any number was like, "Oh, okay." And they keep on highlighting, okay, I mean, there were definitely some funny scenes, and like Kristen Chenoweth definitely has a great delivery where it's
Right.
comical between her voice and just how she is able to deliver jokes, and they were there. But all in all, it was just not a good show. Not a good show, and it's a shame. It's such a miss. Steven Schwartz, going from Wicked to that, but and I know not all pieces can be winners, but I don't see this lasting very long, Kevin. It was so bad. And they've been marketing it really well in New York City too. I was really excited. I got there's an app called the Theater app, and it's an app where you can bid for tickets that are canceled that for those that can no longer make a performance. So I lowballed the person and she accepted my offer. I was like, "Yay, I'm gonna go to this show." And of course, because of Kristen Chenoweth, it's very expensive.
Hmm.
And now more than ever, they're putting all these big names on Broadway to get shows out there. So yeah, it's a real shame.
Yeah, it's too bad. I would have expected it to be really good.
Yeah,
With the credentials behind it and all that, you would think it would be,
100%.
yeah, you'd think it'd be great. And it sounds like I don't know. Has Schwartz done anything?
They
Um,
said this is his first new content in 25 years, so since Wicked.
oh, so maybe got lucky with Wicked.
And we were there during the preview, so we were talking to people during intermission and I mean, I like to go to theater, but there's some real like critics and everything that were there. And I just overheard people say, "So what do you think?" And a lot of them were like, "Nope, horrible. I don't like this." I didn't hear one good thing, and the little murmurs that I heard as I was walking. I went with a coworker of mine, and she definitely, and it's beautiful how they make the stage with the actual just staging and what's the word I'm trying to come up with?
Like the set?
Set, yeah, the
Yeah.
set design, like it's gorgeous, and like of course, like Kristen looks amazing. The outfits they put her in, she is truly a vision and reflective of this social life. Socialite, excuse me. But in terms of just the actual story itself, I didn't think it was a good musical to put on stage. I really did. And I had ho high hopes for it, especially like with the opening number with them. Okay, great. It says like 1600, and then you have um, Louis, whatever number he is, being painted. Awesome. And then you have like years later a very similar painting of Jackie Siegel with her face on it. So that's hilarious. But it just wasn't good. It just wasn't good. It's just this really like disappointing story about this woman who's money hungry, who fought her way to the top from, rags to riches, but and just pushing home that American dream, but yet like it felt very, I don't know, gross of a story, really, because I mean, I guess they want you to feel bad for her, but I don't, just knowing that this woman didn't give her daughter I think the attention and help that she needed, number one. And then two, she like was very manipulative to get this done. And it's not something that needed to be done.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like a greed is good kind of thing.
I don't know. I mean, it's one of those like definitely a dysfunctional rich family for sure, but it just didn't need to be a show. And I didn't realize it was a show about like her life. I think it was more just like, oh, great, like they're bringing the grandeur of Paris in the story, how they build a home. And but I didn't think it was going to be so negative and filled with such greed, and the characters are just not quality good people from a character perspective. So that sucks. Yeah, I wasn't impressed at all. And I mean, just even there was a guy that was sitting next to us in the second act. My coworker and I, we moved up a row because there were some tall people ahead of us and there were empty seats. So even talking to my cousin works in the industry and speaking with her, and she said they probably didn't make a lot of money. The fact that there were open seats on opening night and the fact that they like the actual theater and production, they'll pay for critics to come that first night
Hmm.
for their tickets, their seats to see the show, to hopefully give it a good write-up. But it just wasn't good, Kevin. And I know it's in previews and they can make some adjustments during this period of time before it officially,
Yeah,
I mean, it is officially on Broadway, but it's in previews, which I think is like a few weeks. It's just it was a real disappointment.
yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the reviews look like out there. Um, when they're like, I don't know how many are published, do you know?
Preview curtain call, the first photo of Kristen Chenoweth's new Broadway musical. I'm not seeing like Kristen Chenoweth is ready to reign. The Tony and Emmy Award winner is, and that was just written 3 days ago. Yeah, this is just, I guess I have to read through. I mean, after I saw it, obviously there weren't going to be any reviews because it's opening night. Yeah, it's just it was so bad, Kevin. But even just hearing the murmurs, I'd be shocked if people actually liked it. And
That'd be interesting.
I don't know how
It,
many changes you can actually make once it hits Broadway, like actually hits the stage at that point.
yeah, I don't know, and it's not easy because you have to be able to make those changes. You can't change the sets. I mean, that's
Right.
tons of money. You could get away with changing some musical numbers or a little bit of,
Sure.
story changes or something like that, but not a lot. I mean,
Correct.
you've got to, come up with it on the fly basically, and then,
They did say though, which I thought was pretty amazing. This is the first time they did both Act One and Act Two without stopping once.
oh wow,
I That was impressive. So they even told us like, hey, just intermission might be a little bit longer this time.
yeah,
And it was a little bit longer. It was maybe like 20, 25 minutes versus 15 minutes. But yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I've never been to a show in preview.
this was the first
Um,
preview I went to. Well, I shouldn't say first preview. This is the first, was it the first opening night? I think it was the first opening night I've ever seen for a preview. So very cool to see that. And we got big posters, which I threw in the garbage. But nonetheless, like they were really excited, hyped the crowd up. The guy who spoke initially, he straight up said he's like, this could be 2.5 hours or it could be 7 hours. We'll find out. Like just happy to have you all here. And I mean, it was cool to be a part of that, but oh, it's just so bad.
Yeah, that's too bad. That's too bad because when you look at the names like you said that are involved, you expect great.
It's Broadway. I mean, she's Broadway royalty,
Oh
and
yeah,
he's a big name too. It's just such a sad, and it's in such a beautiful theater too, the St. James. It's just so sad, so sad. But yeah, I'm curious to read. I remember I was telling with I had lunch with my cousin the day after, and I was like, "Don't even bother. Don't waste your money on it. Just not good. Just not good." So, oh well. But now I can actually say I've seen Kristen Chenoweth sing live.
that's true. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, and she,
Um,
like Idina Menzel, has a real good set of pipes.
yeah, yeah, she's pretty ridiculous actually.
Yeah, especially her
Um,
like with such a tiny body and able
hmm
to project such a powerful voice.
Yeah, yeah, she's pretty great. So,
Yeah,
well, that's too bad. I mean, it's funny that when you put it on paper, the guy that made Wicked put out a show with Kristen Chenoweth, and it's probably the worst show you've seen or talked about on this show.
horrible. So bad. It's just such a shame. And it takes a lot for me to say that about a show. I try to like give things a chance, but it was just so bad. Yeah, very disappointed. But I mean, I know they all can't be winners, but who knows? I mean, maybe it will turn around. I don't know. I don't know how it can, but my cousin did mention to me, and she has a lot of Broadway insight that originally, so there's a show called Death Becomes Her, which is,
Hmm
the movie, right? Apparently, Kristen was supposed to be in that project, and I guess they couldn't come to terms on a contract, from what she told me. And as a result of that, she eventually was approached by Steven Schwartz, who she already had a good relationship with Wicked, and she decided to go to Wicked. And apparently, there were other people that left Death Becomes Her because they were like, "Oh, if Kristen's not going to stay, I'm going to leave too." But it ended up like working out very well for Death Becomes Her because they still got apparently a very I haven't seen it, but apparently the cast is fantastic. And they were nominated for quite a bit. I don't know if they won anything, but they were nominated for quite a few awards this past Tony season. So Kristen, I mean, maybe I don't know if she's kicking herself knowing, or we'll see. But she went with Steven Schwartz on this, and I mean, it makes sense, right? She's had a good working relationship
Yeah,
with
yeah.
him, and Wicked is really what made her career.
Oh, for sure.
So, yeah, but this was just like, I don't know. I think you have to be very careful with like real life stories and
Yeah,
what
I
you're
mean,
making to musicals. And this is just, I don't know why he chose it. I know there was a documentary about this, and that probably definitely inspired him to make a musical, but just, yeah, just not good.
maybe he was taking his Hamilton shot. That's the story behind Hamilton, right? Is that
Sure. You read the autobiography?
yeah, he was literally in an airport traveling, and he just happened to pick up the Hamilton autobiography. I used to actually know who wrote it too, but it's supposed to be an amazing telling of everything that Hamilton went through, and he was so inspired by it that he wrote the musical, and that you know obviously worked for him. And
Right.
so I can see somebody looking for that same like kind of source of inspiration.
Inspiration. Yeah.
It's just too bad it didn't work out.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a musical about greedy people, and it's just not good, Kevin. Not good.
That is too bad. But,
Yeah. Oh
you
well.
know, yeah, they'll move on. They always do. And
Yeah.
Chris, she'll find something else. Like she's never not going to be successful. So,
Right.
you
And like
know,
this is not to say she's not talented. Like it
oh yeah.
wasn't anything against her, but just the show sucked. It just sucked. Sucks so much.
Uh,
But everyone, like I heard it, like other people be, and everyone's dressed to the nines. And my friend and I were like coming from work, we're like in jeans or whatever, and you hear people in these gowns. So what do you think of the show? And then you see on people's faces like this is not good. But we're here anyway to support, and we're excited to be in the industry and to
yeah.
be dressed to the nines. But you heard people say it's not very good, or no, I'm not feeling it. Yeah. But then at the end, I was curious if people were going to be standing for the standing ovation because that would have been embarrassing if no one stood. Everyone stood, but I noticed I was like, to my friend, I was like, I don't want to stand, but I also don't want to be like the only one
Yeah,
sitting because
you
that's
don't want to be the
awkward
jerk.
too. It just wasn't good, but everyone stood and clapped. And of course, like when she came in, oh, and then the guy who plays her husband, he was in White Lotus and a few other things. Let me pull his name. F. Murray Abraham.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, that he was I mean again, apparently he's been in some big stuff. Doesn't have the best set of vocals, but he played the older husband. So I think he did a good job. He was convincing to be like that old rich guy who's like, yeah, let me take this beautiful blonde woman and marry her and give her everything she wants. Be her sugar daddy. Literally, I mean, they had six
Yeah.
kids together
Jesus.
somehow. I know, like she had her daughter, the one that they focus a lot of the show on and who unfortunately takes her life and overdoses, but yeah, and then like after that they had six kids together, which I was like, that's interesting. So yeah, cool.
All right, cool. Well, sounds like we've got a couple things to check out, a couple things to avoid from from this episode. So
100%.
so cool. Well, I don't have anything else. Supposedly Andrew's gonna be back next week, although that's what he said this week. He's a big liar. He's a big lying liar. So we'll see what he does next week. I held off on Gen V, and so hopefully he'll catch up on that this week, and
Hmm.
then we can talk about that next week. I'm going to try and watch the new Conjuring movie. It's out on digital, so I'll try and watch that for next week.
Hmm.
I feel like there's something else I should be watching, and I can't remember what it is. But we've got some stuff coming for next week, so hopefully we'll get that. I think Andrew said he wants to watch the John Candy documentary that is out. That should be interesting.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we've got stuff for next week. It should not be a week off, and maybe Andrew could just stop lying to us, to all of us, all of you.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
Yeah, he's a big fibber. So cool. Well, with that, I will say thank you to everybody for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.